Aloha. This video I wanted to continue on the love chapters and go into the love propaganda that has been utilized by the establishment and how that connects to the New Age agenda, and even how New Age belief systems exist inside the individuals, which then manifest into relationships between people, and then they have babies, and then they have families, and then they have cultures and communities, and design all these things. So here we are, generations upon generations later, now dealing with what today. So one of the main things that was big in my world in the beginning of the so-called New Age, or the New Age time frame for me, was this spirit science YouTube channel that was just starting out at that time. This was 2011, so 8 years ago, when I started researching like inner earth stuff, and because that was the only reference I had. Was at that time, in 2011, I was aware that I think I was aware of that NASA, the astronauts or bullshit video, whatever it was. And that started to bring up all these questions about the universe, but it never really went any further than that. It kind of just died out and went in straight into the New Age. So, excuse me, instead of worrying about the cosmology or researching the cosmology, I was more interested in how the nature of these terminologies existed inside of me, so then I could have a deeper interpretation of what the world was. So I didn't even have any kind of frame of reference to put this stuff for myself. So that was the first thing. This is why I didn't go into any flat earth information at that time, because I needed however much time, at least I guess whatever years and all this other stuff first, before I started venturing into the information involving the external or the macro world. So at that time, there was this abundance of information, because the New Age has been around for a while. The New Age community has been around for a while. I don't know exactly the beginnings of it, but I always reference the term new itself. So it doesn't matter when the New Age started or when the new world started. When did the term new start to be utilized against the people that are deemed as old? Because the term new refers to a concept developed by people who want to sell that idea of newness to people who are still living their lives based upon a level of oldness. When they invented new, they also invented old. So when they invented old, they de-invented your meaning and purpose in this reality. And that's based upon the whole evolution theory and how technology and the university system version of education and intelligence is the evolutionary peak of this experience, of the so-called human experience. So anything beyond that is just like, oh yeah, they're not even going to investigate it because they have their authority there. The authority has said any kind of information that's worth paying attention to comes from us, this establishment. And the old establishment is where information that, doesn't matter anymore. So that's what we're dealing with right now. You have people who are not only dealing with the situation, like dealing with the macro situation of, only things that matter are what the establishment says, but you have people who are living that way personally. So they don't even investigate or acknowledge or see how those things that the machine is using for the macro scale, excuse me, is also affecting people on a micro scale. So when they can't see that, what they end up doing is defending something that's actually working against them. So this is what people who are defending Western civilization are doing, who are defending the New Age are doing, who are defending this fake ass, like harmony and unity based upon flat earth will save the day, that they're doing that. It's the same thing. It's generating this distraction and celebration of something because they haven't done the work themselves. They haven't gone any further than that. So this goes back into the understanding and overstanding of so-called white people being a result of so-called white supremacy in this so-called Western civilization. The mascots for so-called Western civilization, any information that represents or comes from the old world, the so-called old world, is a threat to the new world and all of the empires that have been built in this European Eurocentric consciousness. So this is why there's a conflict of interest in depths of truth with so-called white people. They cannot go beyond their blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. They cannot go beyond the Western so-called civilization. They cannot go beyond the so-called the university system, the so-called intelligence of the modern world. They cannot go beyond their modern interpretations of language. So even this is why, just like you can't, the conflict of interest with the whole system, this is why people can't even disassemble the the limitations within the English language, because if you're disassembling the limitations beyond the English language, then you're going into the intelligence behind controlling people by installing the English language into all these very highly intelligent, complex beings who were speaking languages that were expanding consciousness beyond the mayonnaise sandwich, Mountain Dew version of language that is the English language. And then now you can see how the polar opposite of that is now the expansion of it. Now English language is celebrated around the world as a unifying thing. So, oh, we all speak English now. We are finally becoming a one world people, you know. So this is how the world is selling the future enslavement to you. Through the language, through the industry, through the ideas like sustainable energy and the new age, like free energy and biofuels. The same way, you know, global warming was used to usher in this idea of new thought, concern, compassion for the world. When you know that the system has no interest at all in that. So that's what the mainstream media does to maintain the attention span of the individuals on a massive scale. Just like they have that system is running 24/7, and it's evolving every second of that 24/7 cycle. It's evolving the consciousness of the people overall into the implosive version of consciousness, a slave-minded version of consciousness. So what maintains the distraction from that being a reality are the systems that exist still connected to the system, that still have those belief systems. Like spirit science still has a trust and belief and a love in the Western civilization. They still have a connection to the History Channel through Ancient Aliens and the speakers on Ancient Aliens, and through the storylines that are projected on something like spirit science through Ancient Aliens, which is the Eurocentric version of interpreting this reality. So you can see obviously why I chose this too, this particular YouTube channel, is because this is not only one of the most well-known ones, but this is a really good example of the adolescent tactics that are utilized by the mainstream media and the New Age community to sell information and control people on various levels of consciousness. So you can see every one of these videos are animated videos talking about the Atlantean story, A lot of it is sacred geometry. You can see how this is astral projection. Let's just go into the popular uploads video so you can see what's popular. So number 1, 4 million, the Hidden Human History movie. So that's the number 1 video on here. This is why I chose this video, is because, and you can see the mascot for that video is the Jesus program. So this is how Christian belief systems are sold to you by so-called non-Christian New Agers. So just as certain people can't talk about the English language and they can't talk about Western civilization, well, they can't talk about the Jesus program either. Because that's like talking bad about your president. It's like, no, that's our president. That we can't talk about our president no matter how shitty he is. He is our president. And then they're doing the same thing with like the Jesus thing. It's like, that is our God. We can't talk about the God. That is not only our God, it's the God, the only God. So, you can see how and this is all like, this is now today, like this channel is still making videos, it's still going on and doing its thing, and this is a representation. I've been calling these individuals out since like 2012, since 2011 and 2012, because at that time I already realized something was missing here. And then over those years, the 8 years since then, I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's obvious what it is. It just, you know, the pieces fell into place on their own. So you can see how all this stuff is like, it's the it's the top 40 of the New Age consciousness. The top 40, the TRL, top 10, total request, or whatever it is. A hidden history movie, human history, so obvious. Crystals, astral projection, sacred geometry, channeling, dimensions, power of the heart, male and female energy, the flower of life, keys of our past, meditation. So now we're down to 1.1 million views on insights of ascension, the shift of ages, water, the big picture. So these are all the math of God, cosmic connections, secrets of the moon. So obviously you can see how all this shit is just DNA activation. You can see the trend. Anybody can write papers on what all this shit is. Universal geometry. So all of this has some kind of real, like in your world, any one of these topics, like you can find something that you're going to be like, oh, okay, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. And that's what this system, this New Age system, is banking on. It's like, oh, okay, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. And then you end up buying the whole shebang-a-bang. It's like, oh, since you got that one thing, everything else they're saying must be on point. It's like, nah, that's not how it works. There's micro storylines and then there's a macro storyline. So this channel is clearly giving the facade of a macro storyline by talking about all these different things. You feel like they could be addressing all of the mistruths from the system and all this other stuff, but they're not. They're in the New Age mode of consciousness, which is just addressing all of these micro/macro perspectives from a strictly micro perspective, and never going any further than that. And that's when and why these communities and circles and YouTube channels or individuals, whatever it is, they become dangerous because they just grow over time. You see, like, this channel has like 800 and something, almost 1 million subscribers now. And the reasons why is because the system is so broken that just the same way the mainstream media utilizes adolescent teenagers to sell the agenda, the American dream agenda, like Billie Eilish is being used to sell the American dream agenda today. Like she's the example of the American dream. That's what's being sold to you. So that's to control the demographic of future adults through controlling one artist. So the same way that is utilized with individuals like Billie Eilish, the New Age utilizes the topic-based, like the topics within your consciousness expansion, the awareness of what's going on. It utilizes those topics for further implosion and limitation of a large demographic of people. And you can see what that demographic is looks like. It's attracted to cartoon type individual or cartoon type videos relatively quickly. So they're talking about black holes. So here's here's all your other cosmologies in here too, the limitation cosmologies. And that's the shit that matters. That's the shit that matters right there, is the stuff that is sprinkled in here, like all this stuff, like all this stuff that is here to like be attractive to you. This stuff is only there to suck your distraction so you can talk about black holes and peace. Yeah, so they sell you 99% of bullshit, like I said in the previous days, so that just so you can get that one little vacuum of space percent of bullshit. That's it right there. The world religion movie. Like, I haven't even seen that one. Our Faith. I haven't even seen that video. I've seen most of these because they're kind of old, and like you see 5 years ago. I've seen most of these from when they were originally uploaded. I used to keep up with these back in the day. So I know what they're about. I know what they're about, but that's not really the point. You can see it's not what they're about. It's about what the whole channel is really representing. So yeah, let's get back to that. So this is why there's a conflict of interest in depths of truth, because channels like Spirit Science exist, and they not only exist on YouTube, they exist inside the consciousness of the beings, of the people. So the people have such a vested interest in like this human history storyline that they will not even entertain, they will not even open up their awareness to even entertain a history that is not anchored in this human history bullshit. Like I said, this is the #1 viewed video on this channel, and their version of human history is basically the Zecharia Sitchin, what is it? Just the mainstream, what is it? Like the history books shit mixed in with Ancient Aliens. So it is the New Age version of all right, so that should have been enough. So it's the New Age version of what the education system already implanted over the generations back in the day. So this is like another version of New Age love. This is how people take it. They take it like, oh, this is New Age love. Like, this is what love is really about. It's about, you know, sacred geometry and all this shit. So like I said, that is That's why channels like this in the new age are so effective. So I mean, you can look at adolescentism in everything. I can go through a laundry list of all the different communities that are out there, from the new age community, and you can see these cartoons to like the Big Bang Theory characters that are on there, and how those supposedly men are, you know, they're these man children. They're man children, and they're like, they have this adolescent approach towards thinking, society, and everything that keeps them so consumed in their versions of who they think they are that they don't even have the time. Like the rest of the world is not even in the TV show. This is why TV shows exist that way, all of them. To keep you focusing on the micro story, what happens in the house, not what happens outside of the house. This is why sitcoms were such a big deal, like Friends and Full House, Saved by the Bell, or mostly the ones that focused on like growing pains. It's like one house, like they didn't go anywhere. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is another one. It's like one house. What happens to the people? What happens to the love within the people? That only focus on the love and the relationships within the family, not how that love connects to their culture. So that's another way of keeping the definitions of love and relationship and what they want to try to call humanity at a certain level of consciousness. So that's why I'm saying even your ideas of revolution are, this is why the Civil Rights Act or the Civil Rights time frame, all that stuff, there's a conflict of interest with the government providing you with solutions to the problem that the government created in the first place. So that goes into breaking down the bullshit behind the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement, asking permission to be more of yourself from somebody who hasn't even, or something that hasn't even made it up to where you and your people have already been, and just forgot. So there's a conflict of interest in these manipulated revolutions that are pawned off by, even if it's a revolution of thought, and not even like the Black Panthers revolution, but the revolutionary thought, like the revolutionary thought of disassembling this just accepted version of love, definition of love in society. So yeah, let me get on this and just read this. So this is why you have so-called white people promoted in your truther communities, because they are, for the most part, going to only focus on the sitcom versions of whatever storyline is out there. Just like, you know, what, like the micro stories, they have been conditioned, wired. So look at it this way. Look at all the shit that so-called black and brown people are suffering from in prisons, in the prison industrial complex, in the military industrial complex. Okay, well, look how extreme that is. Now look at what extremes, that's how the system of racism, white supremacy is added up to affecting so-called black and brown people. But the effect also affects so-called white people. Just because they're affected in what looks like positive doesn't mean that it's positive. It's positive on one perspective, but what's the other perspective? These individuals are going to defend. They're going to be the leaders of defending their own enslavement. They're going to be the leaders of intellectualizing their enslavement. They're going to be the leaders of spiritualizing their enslavement. They're going to be the leaders of like watering down all of the revolutions that threaten their system, their subconscious system that provides them with the privilege and the love and the comfort and the security of this whole design. So that is a breakdown of the inherent conflict of interest that so-called white people have in the discussion of truth. It can only, so-called white people can only have so-called, their truth can only go as far as they define themselves. A white person doesn't know what white is. So their truth will be reflective of, see how like sloppy that is? See how sloppy it is to tell the rest of the world that you know what's true and that the rest of it and that everything is going to be saved, but yet you're still calling yourself a side effect, like you still refer to yourself as a side effect of the control measures you claim to have the answers for. So people are talking about truth in reference to lies from the system, but they affiliate, they still define themselves as one of the lies that was handed down by the liars. You see how how that is just, that's not even spoken about. Why? Because it's an embarrassing little thing that has been, oh, let's just keep it little. Let's not talk about that. It's been dumbed down as like a little thing. It's not a little thing. It's only a little thing because the people who have been, the people who have been empowered to dictate what is what and like where information goes and what it does, they were born with limitations of at least thought, like the last few however many generations, through the conditioning of so-called racism, white supremacy, and whatever other limitations come with that too. But definitely the conditioning programs of this system for however many generations is definitely going to affect the people. So if it affects so-called black and brown people by like emasculating, putting drugs and guns and making people violent, breaking families, making people sick and with the food and the medicine and overweight and eat unhealthy, eat based upon their own enslavement, slave food, to think their history is this way and that way. Like, how does that affect the individual? Greatly, hugely. Like it's just like this huge effect on the individual in many different ways, consciously and subconsciously. Well, just because that was designed to affect so-called black and brown peoples, that doesn't mean that there isn't something else that affects white people, because they are a part of this storyline too. So you can see how, just think of it like energetically, like vibrance of light or something. If that light is that bright, or energy is that huge, and information surrounding that subject is that huge around black and brown people, as a result of responding to this story, then what energetically would be the response that so-called white people have to this machine, to this matrix? Well, this is the stuff that I'm telling you. These are the side effects. See, what's publicized and what's televised is that, oh yeah, the only side effects are, black and brown people's this, and we're all enslaved, and this and this. But no. This is the shit that's not talked about, because the conflict of interest within the individuals who are holding the microphone, they can't speak on these because, well, first of all, they don't know how to speak on these issues, and second of all, a lot of them aren't even aware that the issues exist because they accept it as something that's normal. So that's why I'm saying that there's a conflict of interest for deeper truth with these so-called white people, and why white people are promoted. Why you think it's just a coincidence that it was only focused on white people? The Beyond the Curve documentary on Netflix, it was only focused on them. Come on now. It's a purpose there. It's a meaning, and it's not just to make flat earthers look stupid. Now get more real. It's deeper than that. So this same thing, like the version of truth that is manipulated by the limitations of so-called white people who are locked into the colonial consciousness, the same definitions that limit truth are the same definitions that limit love. And love, so the same way you have a Mark and Patricia for truth, you have like for like experiential purposes, you have like a Billie Eilish for love. So she speaks about all this love and all this other stuff. Side note, with all the whole like people going on to YouTube channels talking about this is a man and that's not a man, that's a girl, and that's not a girl, that's a man, you know, all this other stuff, like that's also another distractive ass side effect. I've already mentioned the LGBT agenda, the cloning agenda, the emasculating of the man agenda. Like this all though that man woman shit, that shit fits in the category. That's already a known factor. So don't even waste your time like even going into that. That is already known here. What we're saying, we need to move past that shit, and everybody's to be distracted by that whole that's a man and that's a woman. Well, that's the same thing as saying, well, it's not white people, it's the Jews. It's the same shit. You're missing the macro storyline. How the fuck do you know? Did you like about anything? Like these people are still talking internet information. Like none of these people on there, not saying that they don't know for sure, that you can't know from like investigating and all that other stuff. What I'm saying is that it's a waste of fucking time. It's a waste of time, and it doesn't matter when you're really coming at the macro storyline, because the storyline behind pumping women that are men and men that are women into the society is to maintain this system of chaos, this system of acceptable cultural chaos through the Greco-Roman manipulated of consciousness over the years, over the centuries. So this is already a known factor. This whole like people on the internet researching whether this person is a man and that person is a woman, that's some old new investigatory, like truther investigatory shit that really it runs into a brick wall of nothingness. Like people need that information because it makes them feel good. So who gives a fuck of like stop focusing on just the shit that makes you feel good, because you're wasting other people's time when the storyline could be going so much far beyond that. Keep an awareness about what's what. Make sure you are aware of how these storylines are out there. But just go on, just really just start to go into like how this stuff already fits. You call somebody a man, you call somebody a woman. I'm referencing these individuals the way they are, like I would reference that person face to face. Like if you want to call like a man a woman, or a woman a man, regardless of whatever they eat. Like if you want to, whatever they call it, dead name them. I don't know what the name is. I think that's the term. Like if you want to do that in person, then you go ahead and do that. But I'm going to respect at least the individuals when I'm referring to them, the way they would like to be portrayed, to just as if I was in their face. So you can do all this internet shit about like that's a man, that's a woman. You can do that all you want, but I know for a fact these fucking cowards that are on the internet calling men women and women men, a lot of them won't even say that shit in person. They won't address them like on an extended conversation as such, because it's childish to do so. It's like, oh yeah, you just called yourself a woman. Oh, you're a man, right? And see, that shit is just ridiculous. And I understand how this stuff fits into the whole world of mind control and all that other stuff. As far as, like I said, the manipulating of people with this whole there are no genders and all this. I know, I've already referenced that. But this shit is used. This is another distraction that is used to make the truther community look more stupid. On one level, look more emotional and cheap. You know, it's manipulated by the people behind the scenes. You know, they have fake commenters going around on these channels to create all of these storylines to distract you from your storyline and what you're talking about. Because does it fucking matter about what like what they're saying or what they're projecting to you, or does it matter how you break that shit down? That is where the most potent information is going to come from. It's not going to come from bitching and complaining or trying to point out the things that are obvious. Obviously, there are men out there that are women and women that are men, obviously. But that's not the topic of discussion in these videos, is it? It's mentioned, but it's mentioned as like a side dish to the bigger pictures here. So when you're leaving comments like, that's a man, and that's not a man, that's a woman, and then, you know, who this for what? For what? Like what is that? What is that going to get to? To do what? So I'll leave that there, that point there, because that needed to be said, because there's a lot of these like childish ass approaches to what's going on, and they don't see it because, you know, it makes a lot of sense. There's obviously a lot of, you know, pictures that show like women that look like they got dicks, and you know men that look like, you know, they were women or are women in some kind of way. So that's an obvious thing right there. Now, okay, now what are you gonna do with that? You gonna make a whole like what? YouTube channel about that shit? Okay, go ahead and do that. Now what? You see how it just hits these walls all the time? People say that all the time. And then like, and that's why I said this is the thing that always exists. Will these people making these YouTube channels like hold that line like in the position, in the face of these individuals? So largely, a lot of the times they won't. Some people will, but the most part, people on the internet are fucking cowards. They're not gonna say anything. Like, that's why they don't speak from that perspective. They don't speak from the perspective, the voice that they would hold interactively in the present moment. Yeah, so I'll leave that there. And this is also going into the cowardice nature of this theoretical consciousness through the New World consciousness. They don't really have to have any power. They just have to punk you and like fake and act like they have all this power. It's cowardice. It's childish. It's like this whole, the whole Western idea of dominance and control and authority. It's all this bitch ass just yelling and complaining about how they are the righteous people in the whole universe and they have to save the whole world. So they are the Jesus program. They are the savior individuals constantly. They, like I said in previous videos, they maintain this status of gods and kings over you through the subconscious manipulative programs. Okay, so conflict of interest. Mainstream love is basically like the Billie Eilish of love. Like, what the fuck does Billie Eilish know about love? Billie Eilish doesn't know shit about love. Billie Eilish knows about what the hashtag called love, how the hashtag of love has all these other hashtags in her life. Like, oh yeah, like love means this, it feels this way. Like teenagers can write songs about like how love is, and it'll affect adults, right? Because that's deep. Why? Is because the adults still have teenage type definitions of love in their reality. So the mainstream, in order to maintain control over the masses, they publicize, they create propaganda, making that adolescent version of love the only version, the only definition of love that not only matters, but that exists. So this is why Valentine's Day, even like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, that whole version of family is dialed in with Christmas. The whole version of love is dialed in with Valentine's Day. Your whole version of death is dialed in with Halloween. Your whole version of nation and country and connection with the land is dialed in with 4th of July. Your whole version of history and forgiveness and like all that other shit is dialed in with Black History Month. Your whole version of leaders and gods and kings and white supremacy is dialed in with Mount Rushmore and the White House and this Western political scene on stolen land on top of burial grounds of the original people. So you can see how all this stuff has a mainstream version of reality that is designed to affect you a certain way. So like the last video was, and I was talking about love, the same way there's this definition of truth out there there's this whole mainstream definition of love that is designed to do the same effect on you. So let's see if I got this. So how I wrote it down is kind of like the mainstream love is like the Billie Eilish type of love. It's real because the individual experiences it, right? You can see this person experiencing it, and and you can resonate with like what they're saying. It resonates with you. Like it's a feeling, it's a emotion. They don't even have to say much. You can just see it in their actions and the way they wrote the song. The lyrics themselves don't matter. It's how the lyrics fit together and how the lyrics were written by that experience. That's what really matters, and that's what resonates with people. So the system, the establishment will put out people that maintain a certain resonance, and that resonance will have an inherent control on the level of consciousness of the individual that is being affected by that resonance. So that resonance is promoted through the music industry, your Hollywood industry, your holidays, your culture, your society, your belief systems, your friends and family, your peer groups, your generations, your everything. All of that is designed to maintain those frequencies, those resonant energies. And over time, you start to grow. So the resonant energy might not affect you at 5 years old because you don't have all that shit in your life. But as you grow older, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, all the way up, the resonance of what your family had experienced, the resonance that comes through the mainstream media, the resonance of like all that will eventually start to resonate in your reality, especially if you've been in the indoctrination program of the education system surrounded by other people who are equally being hit with those resonant energies in the same way at the same time. Like as long as that's happening, it's a gauntlet of frequencies that people are not even going to be able to attempt to be able to get out of. So let's see. Let's go to the About section. Is there anything there? Okay. So resonance, affecting the resonant energies, and okay, yeah. So you have the resonance of love through the mainstream media. So you have that's your foundation. And when you have that foundation, anything else it's kind of like a conscious foundation. So the resonant energy of the mainstream media that's meant to control you creates a foundation for love and everything else. And what you do in your conscious realm, and what you do is that since most of your conscious realm is also being bombarded by your primal energy, survival energies, so your time is sucked into other things, your subconscious interpretations, which is the majority of who and what you are, your subconscious interpretations of what it is that you have, of your conscious foundations that have been placed in front of you and the generations before you, those are the things that affect you the most. The subconscious things that you put on top of the conscious foundations planted by the system itself. That's the stuff that matters. So this is why you can never have any real definitions of love or humanity or even your cosmology or who and what you are or any of this stuff. You can never have any of that because the definitions of reality are not meant to be real definitions of reality. They're meant to be theoretical because you have to enslave yourself, and you're not going to enslave yourself if you're conscious of the depths of the information out there. You are only going to be able to enslave yourself when you are subconsciously unaware of what's going on or subconsciously bombarded by everything that's been hitting you generations upon generations. And then you, over time, like I said, 5, 10, 15, 20 years over time, you install those resonant energies into your reality because you have nothing else to install there. You have no critical thought to expand or evolve the definitions or the experiences that you are now experiencing that were already experienced by your great-grandparents and great-great-great-grandparents in a certain way, and they themselves were also conditioned and convinced to react a certain way to those experiences when they come up. And they didn't learn from their previous experiences because they didn't have any guidance. So when it comes down to it, you're not going to get anything from the system. So you have what your previous generations, how they dealt with the situation. So you end up repeating what your previous generations repeated from their previous generations. And that's how the resonant slave energies get passed down the generations. So the resonant slave energies get passed down the lines of generations through your definitions of this reality. This is why it's so important to point out the system itself for the lie and the liars of that system, and disassemble the whole power grid, not focus only on the so-called science, because that's not the extent of flat earth. And if you ask anybody who has any sense of fucking anything, any kind of thing that doesn't have any attachment to any of these bullshit ass communities, you will realize that that's a fucking fact. It's not, flat earth is not about the damn science of it. It's about the lie itself, what the power, where the power came from. So if any fucker out there is telling you or is only doing the science about it, you need to be asking them some questions, especially if they've been doing that shit for fucking 3 years already. When the potential to go further than that is available, get the fuck out of here. If that ain't fishy to you, then you're in this fucking like adolescent resonance. You're just following like a kid would follow an older kid. So like these kids on here, spirit science. The times are changing. Every day, new information is revealing itself that further connects the ancient prophecies and understandings of our ancient past with modern physics understandings of the universe. So this is the blueprint of what they're doing. Only utilizing the ancestral interpretations of reality just to co-opt it and say, they're only saying that to say that they're not separated from that. The same way people in the so-called flat earth community only talk to so-called black flat earthers when they need them, or they're not really in the discussion. There's white flat earthers that are out there, and there's so-called black flat earthers in this fake ass like internet community world out there. And this is a real thing that exists out there. And the so-called white flat earthers don't give a fuck. They don't care about what you're talking about. Your information doesn't matter, and it doesn't have to matter. Why? Because just the way that they exist is enough to dictate the authority of what is what. So they have the authority, and they had the authority in the beginning of so-called flat earth to tell you the way you were interpreting flat earth is the wrong way to interpret flat earth. If you're not talking about only the science of flat earth, you are distracting, deflecting. So where the fuck did these assholes get the authority to say that shit? Where the fuck did these assholes get that authority to inhabit that sort of that pompous approach to something as vast as the cosmology of the entire fucking universe? Where did that come from? It came from the entitlement passed down through the privileges of racism, white supremacy. And then the system just uses that privilege to mock the entire fucking community that isn't even really affiliated with those fucking assholes that they used in that documentary. And then what are those assholes going to do later on? They're going to say, oh, yeah, well, only the numbers matter, so we did a good thing. Well, the flat earth topic is out there, and we did our job. And then now they're the fucking superheroes of the whole damn thing. So that's what I meant by like limiting consciousness through these lack of resonance as people out there that are just, you know, pumping this shit out to the masses 24/7. So the world is waking up. This is the about section of the Spirit Science channel. The world is waking up to the bright realities that we can all experience and moving into a new light. Hear all this new shit. Every sentence has like new in it. The next sentence. The Spirit Science is about that. A healthy discussion about all these new insights. We are not here to say this is the way things are because we don't know. We are here to discuss it openly and allow anyone who wants to openly discuss it as well. Created by, whatever this dude is, in 2011. So yeah, December 28, 2011. That was like the time frame, the exact time frame. I started looking into this in actually November. I started researching the New Age concept because like in November, December, that was when the Occupy protests started. It peaked in like October, mid-October to like November. And then it started to, because it was going into the winter seasons, it started to slow down, and then people either, you know, gave up or they evolved what they were really doing. So I evolved what I was doing and moved into the spiritual warfare version of reality, because that version of reality maxed out at psychological warfare and physical warfare. For the most part, obviously it's spiritual warfare too, but when you should, bring your body that houses, your soul to an event, it's your mind convincing you that your body needs to be at this event because of what? Well, because of the psychological war tactics that were used to make you do something. So once you stop limiting yourselves to being subjected to the psychological war tactics that were designed to make you do something, then you say, okay, well, what am I really talking about here? What else is there? And then you start going into the deeper versions of warfare, which are the breaking down how the spiritual warfare affects all of us on every level. So this is what I was saying. Spirit Science channels and other channels like this, they have a conflict of interest in going to those depths because they only are equipped, they're only required to learn this shallow truth. They're not required to learn any deeper truths because the system is only bad enough for white people to where if the system were fixed, it would be okay for white people. So this is why so-called white truth is based upon fixing the system and not really addressing the cancer that is this Western so-called civilization and the psychology and the concepts behind that. Because that involves like Christianity, religion, and all that other stuff. So this is why there's a conflict of interest with truth and why so-called white people are projected into the truth community as the leaders. And same thing with other, like I said, it's not really based upon race so much, or it's not even race, because white and black is not a race. It's not even based upon that so much because, like I said in previous videos, you have people in black conscious communities that are the whitest people I ever seen in my life. You have people that are in different kind of communities that are just so-called white. Just the deepest, like people, the darkest people on your mainstream agendas are the whitest people in the universe. The darkest people who are, happy and loving and promoted and idolized in the mainstream agenda are the so-called whitest people in the universe. This is that point because it's a consciousness. And that doesn't mean to take away from so-called white people as a whole and their involvement in this situation. That's only to emphasize that this is a mind control that goes beyond but is not limited to the bullshit that is projected through like the civil rights interpretations of race and all that bullshit. It ain't limited to that. So did I finish reading that? So the next sentence is, we are here to discuss it openly and allow anyone who wants to openly discuss it as well, whatever it is, the way things are. Yeah, I did read that. So anyway, let's go back to the videos. Home. All right. Let's see. All right. So yeah. Let's say this real quickly. So like these people that they use to define love are the same people, like Billie Eilish in music, are the same people that they use, same kind of concept, resonance that they use to define truth. So Mark and Patricia are like the Billie Eilish of truth. It's just adolescent, empty ass, still loving the system version of truth. But you know, is it real? Yeah, they're real people. They seem to be a real person, you know, so that's what makes it real. And if people are only as real as the physical versions of themselves, then you only need to keep promoting these physical people that give you a shallow version of their non-physical selves. This is how people are being controlled, by just constantly repeating and reinstalling new versions of like, because there was like a Beyonce 2.0 and then a Beyonce 3.0. So you have like go through the years, like the Madonnas, and then the Rihannas, the Marilyn Monroe's. See, for the guy side, and the other side, it was like Babe Ruth's of society. So it's what these people represent in society. Babe Ruth represented a complete and utter ignorance of the white supremacy program, so much so that they made that dude a god. Babe Ruth is a god to so-called white people who love baseball. When in fact, if Babe Ruth would be riding the bench in the Negro League. Let me say this shit again. Babe Ruth would be riding the bench in the Negro League at that time. And any other South American league or any other leagues that were out there. So the same way the so-called white people had to glorify a bench rider, a fucking bench rider, the same reasons why they had to do that is the same reasons why they have to glorify white people in general. White people are the so-called white people are the bench riders of this consciousness, because they want you. I'm talking about the people who are pushing this mainstream agenda onto your children. Take it fucking personally. They are pushing this shit onto the future generations. If you have babies right now, and for whatever reasons, and not to say if anybody else has babies and then they're not here the next few days or whatever, or the next weeks or years down the line, like their babies are gonna have to deal with this shit, and then they're not gonna have the support groups of, you know, you and your family and all that, or they're not gonna have the support group of you here anymore. So they're gonna deal with this shit in some kind of way. They're gonna be in this experience in some kind of way. And the shit that is promoted by this system is focused on those children. It doesn't give a fuck about you anymore. They already got your ass. They already locked you up. They already conditioned you to think, act, and feel a certain way a long time ago. So this is not for you. This is why these little back and forth interactions in the comment sections and all that other shit, it's not about you and all that other stuff. It's how you are talking about. If you got anything to say something about how, you know, this is important to our future generations. How are we going to interpret what's going on or do something about what's going on that's going to be beneficial for the future generations? Right now, people in the so-called truther community and flat earther communities They're not interested in that. They're interested in being recognized for being the first people to be talking about the information. And they're hiding it. They're hiding that behind the, oh, well, let's just keep it on the topic of science and all that other stuff. No, they wanted that Netflix documentary because they knew that world would pick up on that. They knew that the world wouldn't pick up on flat earth being spoken about in any other kind of way. So you can see how these individuals are knowing what they are doing, at least on some level. And that knowledge is, it's like, it's a knowingness of being a part of this cancer. They know exactly what they're doing on some level, in some way. And it's not just to, do one thing. It's to do a whole bunch of other things. A lot of these people have vested interest in this bullshit that ain't got nothing to do with so-called truth, and everything to do with, their own fucking egos. So I'll get into the depths of, like love beyond the so you can see the non-depth love within the mainstream media. So there's a deeper love I referenced in the last video of what that is, how we can get there. And that involves not reactionary, for starters, cleaning up all the old definitions that aren't your real definitions of love, and then analyzing and breaking down that term love to the point of not even having any attachments to it. That's what I did in a video about 2 or 3 months ago. When I was talking about love, I broke it down to love is not even love. Like I wouldn't even use that word, because that word takes away from the complexities of what love really is. So another word that's used that's better than love that I would use, and I used in that video, was the term awareness, because awareness imposes a sense of responsibility. Whereas love, the term love doesn't have any kind of sense of responsibility. The term awareness has an inherent sense of responsibility and interactive responsibility. So you can have that interactive. It explains the interactive responsibility of love through awareness, when you see the awareness that is between a man and a woman in a deep relationship, or the mother and their daughter, and a father and their son, or whatever, their children. There's an awareness that comes along with caring for. There's a depth of love that is inherent when you use the term awareness instead of using the term love. That's the whole point there. And the system doesn't want you to go any deeper than the terms love. In fact, it wants you to not even use any of those terms that go outside of the mainstream acceptable terms of love and all that other stuff. It's a threat. It's a threat to the system that's held afloat by the illusions. So, in order to get there, let's analyze the limitations of what we call love first. Like this is what's happening. The same thing with truth. Truth, before we analyze what truth really is, you had a truther community telling you what truth was. Why? Because they were empowered by the identity of what truth is. And how did they get that? Because white people told them to do that. White people created the truther community. Because they have the authority. They have the intellectual authority given to them by the system that says that has this arrogant ass approach to what's going on, that says they have everything. So let's take it out of their hands and then take it back to the system, and saying that the system knowingly created the truther community. But like I said, does that take the responsibility or the effectiveness of so-called white people in the truther community? No. It makes it more obvious, obviously, because they are the leaders of that manipulated, governmentally manipulated truther community, that agency. That's what that is. So those are the limitations. The limitations of the truther community are the same, or the limitations of love that you have in the mainstream communities are the same limitations that you run into in the truther communities. New Agers want to guess. Okay, so yeah. So this is the thing. When you're in that space of not knowing, because this is the side effect to a truther community, you're unified in this space of not knowing anything. So you're also, when you're in that space, you have something that you do know, and that's what keeps people together. That's what keeps people going. You have something that you do know, and what's held the community together is that nothingness is agreed upon, and then we can just move on in the future, and the information will reveal itself on its own. So what happens when you're in that space is you need to constantly fill that community in those circles with new attractive things, like things to look at and see as far as like a part of you. You need new stuff over time. So the internet is perfect for that. So they keep installing these new distractions into your fake definitions in the first place. You don't have any real definitions of who and what you are. You just have this pre-packaged, pre-chewed definition of love, this pre-packaged, pre-chewed definition of truth. And then you just do, whatever you can with what you got. Yeah, this pre-chewed definition of spirituality with religion and the Bible and the blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus program. Like all this pre-chewed shit is supposed to be for what? What the fuck? Like, how the fuck are we not even allowed to analyze the depths of mind control with the Jesus program and the Bible and Christianity, knowing that the main religion for control on the masses is the Christian belief system in that whole in the whole Western so-called civilization. Like, that's what I mean by the limitations, the inherent conflicts of interest that so-called white people have with deeper truth. Like Native Americans, indigenous people, we can't even talk about our gods. Like in the truther community, we can't talk about our definitions of gods and relationships to land, because the leaders of the truther communities, the leaders of spiritual truther communities, even in the flat earth. So if you're in the flat earth, like you're held back from even talking about your spirituality because you don't want to be attacked by, this is not me, this is other people. I'll talk about it anyway, I don't give a fuck about them. But you have people who don't even want to talk about their versions of spirituality in the so-called flat earth community, because the flat earth community is heavily inundated by the Christian belief systems. And the Christian belief systems take over the whole circles, the community itself. So if you have any kind of things that are thought groups that are outside of, and this is obviously generalizing, but I'm talking about the atmosphere of it existing at all. At all, because you're going to have people go in the comment sections saying, we have people from all over all different kinds of people who are different spiritualities who are talking about flat earth, and we're not stopping anybody from doing it. I was like, no. You're stopping people from researching that shit, like by what I said before 3 fucking years ago when I said the flat earth community, run and sponsored by so-called white people, is only wanting to use the indigenous interpretations of the cosmology only for the pictures. They don't want to talk about the actual symbolism, the symbols used in those images that were possibly showing a so-called flat earth. They just want to use the picture to debunk the NASA picture and then just leave it there. So they're not really respecting the indigenous cosmology. They don't give a fuck about the indigenous people. They only want to use the indigenous information for their own benefit, for their own truth. So this is why I said is a threat. Their conflicts of interest are a fucking threat to the overall movement of what we're talking about, any kind of information. because they still have this conscious and subconscious attachment to their own enslavers. Okay, I'm closing this out. I'm almost done. So yeah, New Agers want to guess the world away. They want to channel like Abraham Hicks and Bashar and Cryon, all these people. They're like, that's another form of fucking guessing. You can't really confirm any of that shit. It just feels like love. It feels like truth. It feels a certain way. And that's all people need, is the emotion of love, the emotion of truth. They don't really need truth. They need the emotion of truth. The emotion of love is all people need in order to live a so-called normal life in this experience. So you have the New Agers just guessing their ways about like channeling and crystals and cosmology and history. And like I said, that video that was on here just now, the most viewed video on here, the human history. Their version of guessing for human history, something as important as human history, is where do they pull it from? They pull it from ancient aliens again. Eric von Daniken, Zechariah Sitchin, and all these other, David Wilcock, all these other people who are attached to that bullshit. That's where they pulled it from. And they start there and then they work their way forward. And then that's the New Age. And then anybody else who doesn't want to start on their bullshit ass starting line, who doesn't want to talk about their micro concepts at all, because you know that's a limitation when you are aware of the macro storyline. The people who don't want to, you know, deal with that shit, we're demonized. We're like, oh yeah, like you guys are divisive. You're not about bringing people together. You're about dividing people. It's like, get the fuck out of here with that little adolescent ass shit. Fucking annoying ass shit. It's just little kids. This is how little kids will get in your face. Sit your little funky ass down. Get the hell out of here. Okay, so New Agers want to guess, channel, and hope. So they live in that world of tomorrow. It's all about the future. So this is why New Agers are heavily inundating your reality with technology and future societies that are built upon like using computers and robots to make our lives better. So this is white people saying like, their version of making the world better is to just not fuck up anymore. That's white people. That's what white people are saying in the truther community. That's basically what it is. We promise not to fuck up anymore. It's not us who fucked up. It was our ancestral white people who fucked everything up. And we just don't want that to happen anymore. So we'll just move on. We'll get better. And then when you bring up all this shit that's more important, because they want to define your experience, like what you went through. They want to define it. That's why when they tell you, like, let's just get over it. Your story doesn't matter. You're being divisive because you're talking about race. They're telling you that because they are empowered by the authority of this system to generate what reality should really be about. It's about how they feel about what's going on. It's not about anything else. It's not only about how they feel about what's going on. It's about how they feel about what's going on against how you feel about what's going on. So you can't even, this is a thing that's not universal. It's a very real thing in so-called white people. What white people do, I'm generalizing again, but to share this concept that's a very real thing, what white people do is that they have this idea of something, and then you have an idea of something, but you have an idea of something that is observing these other people's idea of something, like in Africa or in like Australia, they're like in the Aboriginals in Australia, or like people, indigenous people all over the world have these interpretations of something, right? And then you had the white people showed up and said, oh, well, we interpret that thing this way. And I'm like, wait a second. You just took what we said and then just changed it and then just said that you invented it now? And because they did that, that's why they have to attack what you have already discovered and known. It's because they've generated their bullshit ass versions of what you already broke down. And the very nature, the very existence of what you had already broken down, the very nature of that existing is a threat to the lies and the theories that they invented on top of, like, they took the good parts and all the other stuff. They took some of the good parts and all the other stuff they hid away. They hid underneath the Vatican. They hid underneath these university systems. They hid underneath all these secret places. They hid all this information. And then that's why so-called white people can't have any other truth other than their own. They can only have their truth. This is why there's a conflict of interest with so-called white people and the idea of truth. And if you start to investigate the so-called truther community, you will see it is mostly so-called arrogant ass white people running around talking about they have the fucking truth. And if they're not white on the outside, like being seen as society as so-called white, whatever the fuck that is, they are psychologically and consciously expressing those white resonant energies through whatever the topics they're talking about. So let's see. Okay, so how I wrote this down is the New Agers want to guess, channel, hope, and Reiki themselves into love without at all analyzing the intelligently designed, not love consciousness. I'll read that again. New Agers and also so-called white people want to guess, theorize, channel, hope, and Reiki themselves into love without at all analyzing the intelligently designed, not love consciousness. So there's a not love consciousness out there that is an intelligence that has been invented by this system of racism, white supremacy, control measures, and all that other stuff. There's been this invention of Dollar Tree love. And the same way so-called white people did with the New Age or with Flat Earth, they're doing this with love now. They're saying, or with truth overall. They're saying, yeah, we've discovered the truth of this storyline, but we don't want to talk about, how the lie was created. The only thing we should focus on is how cool the truth is. It's fucking awesome, right? Look at all these shirts and pendants and models we can make about how awesome this truth is. Oh, fuck, it's awesome. Can we live on this cloud of awesome our entire lives? No, you cannot, you fucking idiot. You can't, because you're only looking at one side of the story. And because you have the internet backing you up and supporting you and all that other bullshit, you can be a fucking celebrity, a one-sided celebrity. You got these one-legged, one-armed, and no disrespect to any people who got like one leg and one arm, but you got these, you see what I'm saying? Like these consciously or intellectually one-legged people talking about they have the truth of the whole fucking universe. Not only do they have the truth of the universe, but you can't even speak your truth of the universe. Like your truth is not even valid. That's why I said our truth and our way of interpreting reality and experiencing reality is different for so-called white people. White people cannot have other truths existing. They have to dominate it. They have to control it. They have to destroy it. They have to smoke it out, and they have to snuff it out. Because their truth is not real truth. Their truth is truth based upon theories and limitations that hold them up on a pedestal against the rest of the world. That's why I say this love, truth, cosmology, all this shit is one fucking storyline. It's one thing. Racism, control, power, politics, all this is one storyline. So I'll leave it there. I think this is it. I'll leave it on this, actually. One thing I wrote under that is, after all that ignorance and avoiding of, you know, these storylines by the people who have a vested interest in the system and have a conflict of interest with a deeper truth, after all of that, I wrote, the love that comes after you get out of that bullshit. That's what I was saying in the beginning of the video. All that shit that I had to, like, it felt like I was walking through a forest of shit just to get through there, and like I'm covered and like barreling through with a machete and just cutting all this shit down just to get through there. It's like, and now when you come out on the other side, that was unnecessary. Ultimately, like, it's unnecessary. Like all that shit I just said, it's unnecessary for a lot of people that are in and around my circles who don't even know anything about flat earth and all this other stuff. The whole fucking thing is largely unnecessary because this is everyday known reality for a lot of people. And that's a fucking truth. That's the truth that so-called people in the so-called truther community don't even acknowledge as real truth. I'm telling you, that's a real fucking truth. People know the depths of this shit, and they have that truth, that very valid fucking truth that is more vibrant than in this internet ass truth. They have that, and they don't know about your flat earth and your mud floods and your no forests and all this other bullshit in this internet version of truth community. And since that internet version of truth is so it's very similar to the new age truth, that what they do is they not only have to have their truth and talk about only their truth, but they gotta shit on your truth. They gotta fuck your truth over. And they gotta say, no, this is what so-called white people did in a flat earth community. That's why they said keep flat earth focused on the science, because science keeps the flat earth topic, keeping the flat earth topic on science keeps the flat earth topic on so-called white people. It keeps the topic on the system fixing itself, because they can science the shit out of flat earth, and they can address and speak on flat earth without talking about the depths of what the lie itself created, how that affected us. And you have these so-called truthers who are not truthers at all. They are hired help. Whether they're getting paid or not, or whether they know it or not, they are hired help by a consciousness of limitation. And that consciousness of limitation affects every single aspect of these individuals' lives when they are floating through this privileged ocean of shit. And they can't get out of it. So I was saying that's why they defend all this shit. And when I came to this at the end of that paragraph, you can feel the kind of like, because I read it and I thought it was going to be another version of what I was just reading. And then when I read it, it was like, oh yeah, it's not what it is. That place doesn't have all that weight. It resonates on a different vibration. And it's very simple. It just says the love that comes after is some fire ass shit. So the love that comes after all the shit I just broke down is a fire that exists inside of you that is a threat to, not only a threat to the system, but it's something that is, and I don't even know it yet. I just know what it could possibly be. That internal fire that is, because it's not limited to this bullshit ass like, oh, partner love. You have a love that turns on in intelligence. You have an ancestral love that has an intelligence. You have an interactive, in the moment love that has an intelligence. You have a zone, like a zone of consciousness love that has an intelligence. And I'm using the term intelligence to emphasize all of the possibilities that come along with intelligence. So imagine marrying intelligence with the depths of what love really is. Now imagine an entire life going through like the science and the spirit of what that really is. Like that's the fire shit that I'm talking about, that we're not even allowed to in many different ways to get into that discussion, because you have these so-called white people like that use that term to do this consciously, who are limiting the whole conversation, or are being bought off and paid and used on the internet and social media to maintain the conversation, or distract you from it. So like even in this video, I spent all this time talking about love and truth and communities and all this other stuff, and mentioned white people in reference to that, and it wasn't even really about them. It was talking about the consciousness of the term, the definition of what white is. And yet you're still going to have people talking in the comment sections here or on another video somewhere else saying, it's not about white people, it's about the Jews. It's like, that's not the point. We're not saying this. The way you're approaching what I'm saying is automatically, so you can see how it's a disease. It's kind of like a parasite that just, you know, shoots diarrhea out of the mouth, because, you know, people don't want to they don't really want to address what's going on. They can't look at it. So let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll leave this video here. There's some other things, but I decided to put this stuff up because the quicker I get this video up, the quicker I can go on to the next video and unveiling whatever that is. Because right after that video, I had like another 2 or 3 videos to break down, and I just didn't do it because that one was good enough. But yeah, so I'll leave this one here. Hey, look at this stuff. Sumerian epic. Cannabis in Canada, or flag. See, you see all these new age. Anyway, I'll leave it. I'll revisit this another time. So, yeah. Peace.